Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Time zones, what are they?
Uh,
This is actually my second cup of coffee in a couple of days now that I'm having. It's been
as
too
in,
warm.
been too, that's why I was like,
Yeah.
as in
I
you're cutting down on coffee. I was confused, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it's hot, and
mm,
you do not deal well with heat.
no, I don't. I've been drinking tea in spite of it being warm because for me tea is more refreshing.
Hmm.
Um, so that I've sometimes been able to do in spite of the heat. But coffee for me I can't have it, like unless it's iced coffee, of course. But I can't have it if it's too hot. Like I can have it on a decently hot summer day, like at a cafe. I can still have it, but when I'm dying, like I have been the last couple of days, nah.
Um, I mean, to be fair, something like that happens again. You could always pre-make some tea and put it in the fridge, have
Yeah,
it
but
get cold.
I don't like it cold. It's
All right,
not like
fair enough.
I have like okay, if I'm having iced tea,
Hmm.
then it's gonna be like the sugary, super sugary store bought stuff.
Fair enough. Fair
Um,
enough.
like making tea and cooling it down. For me, that's too bitter.
Understandable. It's just that's what I've been doing at work
Hmm.
is pre-making tea since it's getting warmer these
Hmm.
next few days and stuff like that. But figure let it offer at
Honestly,
least.
just even making tea, though. I mean, because particularly if you heat up more water than you use, like in a water boiler, I mean,
Mm.
it still raises the temperature inside even more.
I
So
want to know how much that is because it's just kind of like
it's
because
not that
because like
much, but like I mean, for example, like if you're cooking when it's this hot, it really adds to it. And then
right.
I can feel a noticeable increase thanks to my computer. So like if you add up all the things like having light bulbs on, having the electronics on, making coffee, making tea, because my mom always has the coffee maker on as well for long periods of time, and I think that actually does add up quite a bit.
Isn't some of the things that I sent was just like, well, if you're gonna keep opening and closing your freezer in order to do it, go. You may be trading a warmer kitchen for a cooler house, and it's just kind of like, how often, how much do you actually have to do that for that to make a difference?
Maybe they're thinking about the people who will like open their fridge or freezer to get a cooler temperature in the room, and then
Well, the general idea was to get some ice and put it in a
yeah,
bowl and put that bowl on the
yeah.
fan
Mhm.
because it'll blow the cool air around the house.
Mhm.
You could also do the same thing with frozen vegetables or something like that if you've got that
Yeah, yeah.
because and then like it was just like if you're gonna do it repeatedly, you might be trading this, and it's just kind of like how often do you have to do that for it to make a noticeable difference, though?
I don't know.
But
I think that would partially also depend on the type of fridge or freezer you
mhm,
have, among other things.
yeah.
But yeah, so mostly I've been dying out of this temperature. Today is a bit cooler. I'm happy about it. That's why I'm able to have coffee.
That's good.
Hmm. How have you been?
I've been working a decent amount on a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
I took what we said last time a little bit to heart. I kind of followed up with people who are more familiar with the deviant conspiracy rules. So when I had some free time yesterday,
Hmm.
in between helping a couple of people with their character stuff, I started making them into conspiracies for different actions and things along those lines. So that way it's a little bit more organized.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, you're always a very good and, in my opinion, diligent DM because you do a lot more than I would. Which is not perhaps not. that much of a compliment because I don't do much prep at all. So
I think it really depends because you've got like some DMs that just do a lot, and this is tied to that, and that's tied to whatever type of thing. And
mhm.
I don't think I get to that point. It's just that this is a very easy creative outlet that makes it so that way people are counting on me to actually finish things,
Mm,
which is kind of what I use it for.
yeah,
But so I put in a little bit more work, or probably I think about the same amount of work that I would do in the old play-by-post stuff that we used to do.
yeah. I wish that I could still get into those a bit more. Like, cause I'm still on a play-by-post role-playing site, but I haven't written there in ages. But that one's kind of like it's fine. Oh, that was my dog bumping into the table. Uh, he's playing with my cat. Uh, and it's like I will have ideas and thoughts for it, and the moment I sit down to actually write, it just disappears. And I think it's just I think I am too tired and too like I I will say that I'm too stressed for it, but it's not like I don't have time to do things because I do have a lot of time. It's just over time I've sort of been worn so thin. I have a really huge need for recovery.
Mhm.
So even though I have a lot of time, I spend it on pretty low energy things because I'm still like in recovery mode, and so the energy that I have, um, I find it difficult to put it towards hobbies of mine that require more concentration or energy. I still struggle to find the energy for that. Um, and a lot of the energy I have also goes towards like taking care of the bare minimum tasks that I need to do in order for my life to function, like just everyday things.
I get you. Um, I mean, like, because if I had more time and knew that I would be more active in it, that is the problem for
Yeah.
me. Is because like I'll get excited and then I'll be active for a month, and then after that month's done, it's like, okay, it's a coin flip on if I'm gonna do anything with it or not.
Mm.
Um, because like there are plenty of people that do play by post for Chronicles or that do play by post for Scion or the other
Mm.
storyteller games and stuff like that. And it's like I could do that, and then
Yeah.
it's like, but do I want to?
I mean, you have us. Although,
Hmm.
to be fair, you're the DM, and it's not the same thing as being a player.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I've got because
I'm
like
glad I get
what?
to be a player now because I've thought about DMing and I just don't like it's not a good idea for me to do it at this point in time. It would just be one more thing that I wouldn't have the energy to properly do.
Being a player is fun. Like there are times where it's been like, ooh, playing Deviant. It's like I wonder what I could sit there and make this character with. Or playing
Mhm.
a Scion is like I would play Scion of this, but like unlike other things, it's kind of like I don't really feel the need to be a player right
Mm.
now. Thing for better and for worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've been in a similar situation where like way back when, I didn't necessarily feel the need to be a player when I was DMing Pathfinder for a long time, like 2 years. Um, like I felt like I wanted to be a player in, for example, Apocalypse World at that point.
Hmm.
Um, and it was like, yeah, I mean, if someone were to really want to DM Pathfinder, then sure, I wouldn't mind being a player. That would be fun. I have a bunch of character ideas that I could do, but I could also do those character ideas as a DM and implement them as NPCs, as long as I don't steal the spotlight from my own players, of course, because they
Mhm.
are sort of the protagonists, the main characters of the story. So don't steal your players' spotlights with DM NPCs or DMPCs. Um,
Right.
but I can still get to play around with builds or character concepts, personalities, and stuff like that, as long as it's in moderation. And I would do that, um, and that was also kind of a fun way to see which character concepts would stick because I would throw in a bunch of NPCs, and many of them my players would just sort of prod a little bit, what's this about, and then they would lose interest and they would fade to the background, those NPCs, or be completely forgotten. Whereas others, they would be like, oh, this is super interesting. I want to know more about this NPC. We need to help them do this and this, and we will bring them with us for this and that. And some got a much bigger part of the story than I thought they would because the players actually wanted to bring them along and wanted to know more
Mhm.
than I had even planned out for them, which, improv comes in handy for those types of situations. Um, and some of them that I thought people would be interested in were just like, nah. Not that they told me like, nah, this isn't interesting, but more like you see what your players do and you notice what they pay attention to and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Um, most of my characters are kind of just general ideas, and the world or the other players kind of help flesh them out type of
Hmm.
thing. Because, like, I can have the entire idea of a character there, but if the character's motivations or something like that don't mesh with the party, or if they're allied with the party, that is,
Yeah.
uh, then it's kind of like, then there isn't really much reason for the character to be there.
Yeah.
But in the case of like antagonists, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna make a fucking asshole. Like this guy's gonna get really into your stuff. But that's difference in regards to the role that they're playing.
Yeah. I remember one NPC that I didn't expect my players to like so much that I had no plans of making into anything major was this sort of old hag type of character. Um, and she was mostly there to hand out a minor quest and have a couple of magical items to sell and maybe some random information where some of it would, like, rumors. Not all rumors are true. So some
Mhm.
information would be accurate, some wouldn't be. Uh, but my players absolutely loved that old woman. And they were like, like she must be important. Like we need to do this quest, and then maybe she'll tell us more about this, and we'll try and because I was DMing Kingmaker for them, Pathfinder Kingmaker, and so they were like, oh, we need to get her as one of our advisors for the kingdom, and all types of stuff like that. Um, so they were hell bent on recruiting her, and I was like, this is just, I didn't say this, but it's like I just made this so you would have an extra quest that would bring you that would have a chance of bringing you closer to a more relevant area, and no, I ended up having to put a little bit more work than that into her, and like give her actual stats and everything. So, but that was fun.
You don't have to give them stats. If you give them stats, that means they can be killed.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're gonna be an advisor to the kingdom, then I know you need the relevant stats for it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because how that
Um,
works is there's a bunch of calculations for example, like the diplomatic ability of the kingdom and stuff like that, so,
mhm.
which is based on
Oh,
charisma and yada yada yada.
yeah, kind of makes sense. Um, yeah, I've got a couple of my players in my Thursday game play Pathfinder, so I get a lot of the what's it called? The little side stuff or side notes, and it's just kind of like, okay, I think I can get some of the stuff and how to play it, but That one I think is still a little bit too crunchy for me, unless I'm being a player specifically.
Which is fair. I mean, for me, I feel like I think personally that it's very similar to D&D 5e, for example. Sure, there's quirks about it that aren't similar, of course, details. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah,
think that if you know one system, it's really easy to learn the other. But
I
that's a
think
personal
it's
thing as well. I mean, I come from Pathfinder into 5e. I imagine probably more difficult to do it the other way around.
it's less of a aspect of difficulty type thing, and it's more just the crunch because like
Mm.
completely different system. Mutants and Masterminds is something that I would say has pretty high levels of crunch. Maybe not
Hmm.
the crunchiest system out there, but if you don't get the right abilities, then your build probably isn't going to do what you
Mm.
want it to.
That's
Whereas
fair.
with 5e, while there are similarities in how it's played and how it's done, type of thing, it doesn't matter if I grab the Mage Slayer feat or if I grab one of the other feats when I can grab feats with the character in order for my build to work. One's probably going to work better than the others, but it's not gonna drag my character back, especially if everyone's being high end or the power gaming or the min maxing
Mm.
metagaming munchkin, to quote Jughead. But
I mean, I don't like. I feel like that's not a. Maybe I just haven't played with the wrong type of people for my own playstyle, but or maybe I just have had such a good idea of what I wanted to do with my characters. But I've never felt like that was an issue, even when I was a new player in Pathfinder. I didn't feel like I was being dragged down by poor decisions or anything. But that may just be also the fact that everyone was on a no, I wouldn't say a similar level because certainly I was playing with people who knew the system better than I did when I was a new player. But I was probably playing with people who were more into just making the character flavor that they wanted. And I think for that, this is a personal opinion again, but I think that
mhm.
Pathfinder is better for customizing character flavor than 5e is.
um, yeah, like the aspect about it is something that I will agree, at least when it comes to 5e, is 5e's flavor is um not necessarily always backed up by mechanical choices,
Yeah.
whereas other systems do that much better.
And of course,
Um,
like you don't need to back flavor up with mechanics. It's just
right.
something that I personally value because to me that's a source of inspiration that I can draw from. Like I can go in and I can look at these mechanics and I can be like, "Oh, you know what? I could make this type of character that and like, you know, they could do this and this and like it starts playing up in my head, not visually, I would say, because I'm not a visual thinker. I almost have aphantasia or whatever, however that's
Mhm.
pronounced. Close enough, anyways. But it still becomes sort of like a movie or a book, perhaps more appropriately in my head, where it's like, oh, I could make this archetype, like this stereotype of a character, and it would play out like this and this and this, and that gives me motivation, inspiration, and like a feeling inside that I can always fall back on in order not to lose sight of my own character because that's something I feel happens for me when I've played 5e is I'll make something with a vague idea because even then like even in character creation I don't get that inspiration that I need to have like that clear picture of what I want to do, but I'll make something with some idea. And then a couple of sessions in, of course, my view of a character always changes as I play them. It's never cemented all that strongly, but I lose track of that inspiration even that I had in the beginning, because usually I'll at least want to keep track of my core idea, my core identity for the character, and I feel like I lose that very easily in 5e when the mechanics don't back or sometimes even contradict what I have in here. Maybe that's
Yeah.
why I need to write things down more often, but
Um, I think part of the thing, and this is just general character design type thing, less whatever. But in regards to role playing, I think part of the thing that's helped me with a couple of 5e characters is focusing less on the core concept of character creation, because there have been about recently that I can think of 4 characters, two of which were for some smaller things. So I don't really remember a lot of stuff in there. That's just like, I want to play this class and this is what I want to do. But the rest of it has been with what some people call forestory instead of backstory type of thing.
mm-hmm,
Like for the sequel campaign thing to one of the ones that I used to play with one of our players, Red Ghost,
mm-hmm,
for D&D. I had an Eladrin Bard, um, and the things that I had about that Eladrin Bard is that Eladrin Bard was very well traveled because they've been traveling around the world for the better part of a century. And they left the Feywilds because of a massive catastrophic event that happened in the Feywilds, and they did not agree with how Titania handled it. So they
mm-hmm,
said, fuck this, I'm out.
mm-hmm,
Outside of that, I didn't have anything in regards to it. It was why they are at the area that the party meets them at,
mm-hmm,
and that was it. And then that character ended up being a Dom for hire, had the whole big goth aesthetic that happened afterwards, became kind of like a quasi-responsible individual in regards to a lot of the how the party was moving, um, and just like but something else that started is even though they were a dom for hire, they were more asexual type of thing. Um, like they just did it in order to help people get themselves or get a form of relief type of thing afterwards. And a lot of that happened during play in comparison to thinking about the concept beforehand. Um, Even with Hikon, my monk that I've been playing for 4 years now, I think it took to about episode 10 before I had more of his backstory thought up. Because a lot of it was, I'm just going to sit here and think about this, and this is what we're going to do, mechanically speaking.
I wish I
And
was
then,
like that.
and
For
then
the
it
most
got to
part,
a
I'm not
point
though.
And then I got to a point where it was, why is he still with the party? And it was like, okay, I have to sit down and think about this for a little bit.
Hmm.
Because I still wanted to play him,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like I kind of wish that I could be more like that at least. But if if I don't see something mechanically that's interesting to me or inspiring, then I'm like, why pick any of these classes ever?
Mhm.
Like I see nothing interesting here. Why should I play this? Um, I mean, maybe it's just an attitude thing. I could just have a bad attitude. I don't know, but like, uh, I've done quite a bit of reading of the material that I had available to me at the time for 5e.
Mhm.
There's certainly probably a lot of more out there. Well, I know there is, but like I wasn't willing to pay for everything just to read it and see if anything was interesting. Uh, Because that's a lot of
If
money.
if you have D&D Beyond, I could add a campaign and throw you in there if you wanted access to
Yeah.
one.
Um, I'm not interested anymore. Like I am not picking
That's
up 5e
valid.
another one more time. Like unless it's for people that I really enjoy playing
Mhm.
with, I'm not picking that system up. I'm done looking at it. But the experience that I've had is like, yeah, I looked through all of the material I had available to me, and it's like, okay, so this is just bland warrior, bland rogue, bland whatever. Of course, I can put my own spin to it, but there's nothing that pops out to me. There's nothing that makes me go, "Ooh, this is interesting. Let me read more. Let me play with this in my head. Let me do something."
Mhm.
Um, Whereas for me, like now I haven't been reading Pathfinder stuff for quite some time because I haven't been neither a player nor a DM in it for quite some time. But when I would go on there, um, like even as a DM, sometimes I would have a vague idea for what the party would need, and like they would need a character, and oftentimes I would like go in and look at different classes that might have something similar to that, or somewhat of that feel to them, and then I'd just look at a bunch of archetypes, and eventually I'd go like, "Ooh, this mechanic, this sounds really interesting," or this feat, or whatever, this trait here, and then I would just build everything around that. Well, I mean, I'd start with something that the party needed, but I could always go there and be inspired. Whereas even trying to make my own character for 5e and having an idea of what I wanted to do, I couldn't find anything that grabbed me. I just got demoralized because I felt like there's nothing here for me.
Well, even with Scion, like you were missing some of the stuff in regards to it, and you're like, hey, can I just be a Scion of this god instead?
Yeah, yeah, I do that sometimes.
It's fine, we're making it work. I've
Yep,
got like a lot of the stuff sit there and grabbed out for it, so it don't matter
yeah,
to me.
but with Scion though, it's also like I looked at that and it's like, ooh, here's a pantheon that I like, but there's not the god. There's no god that resonates with me, but the pantheon does. How can we make that work? So even there is still something that inspires me. And also, to a certain extent, I think it's also that I didn't grasp the system when I sat down with it properly. I still don't, because I haven't sat myself down with it properly yet. As you well know.
I'm just making time. If you want to sit there and talk a little bit about it after we're done here, I can. I'm available for a little while. If you're busy and you've got other things to do, I understand. I'm just making sure like I'm keeping my word and saying that I'm available for
Yeah.
the next month type of
Mhm.
thing. So,
Mhm. No, we'll figure it out. Um, but yeah, again, that system has a lot of abilities that are super interesting, particularly because of how you could flavor them and like
mhm.
how they're worded. That's another important part. So, I mean, yeah, sure, I did some of my own things there, but it was also in part by being inspired by the system itself. So, once again, I think it's better than 5e.
I will admit, since I did kind of bring it up, I am so excited for visitations. I like because yeah, in some cases there can be trials, which is a little bit of rolling or something like that, but it's something that I've experienced in 5e, with the exception of like really good storytellers or something like that, is sometimes the big moments come, but to me it feels a lot like everything else. With a visitate like a good way to explain that is um whether it's a side quest or whether it's a main quest, you go around, you get the information, you find the boss, you fight the boss, you kill the boss,
Hmm.
type of thing. Um, which is fine because it's kind of like linear storytelling that's kind of going up, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong, I'm having a good time with my stuff. But like with a Scion visitation, the aspect that I think that I really like about those is they're even if even if there's rolling in a trial in there, which spoiler alert, there will be for some of the people in our next game. Um, it's still a lot of role play,
Hmm.
and like it is a very clear. This is a next step. This is a step up. This is a change to how it's going type of thing.
Yeah.
Which I know that they kind of had some guides for doing that in other or in older editions of D&D, where it's just kind of like once you reach this level, this is what happens, and you get a castle, and you do this stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. I also feel like I mean, because D20 systems, by and large, tend to be very combat focused. Like all classes are good at combat in some form. Some might mostly be good at supporting others in said combat. But if we, if I'm thinking about Scion, I could make an entirely social character
Mhm.
with no combat capabilities. Sure, I would be terrified if a fight breaks out, because I'd be really bad at it. But on the other hand, for the most part, you can handle all situations in various ways. You might be able to run away. You might be able to persuade the enemy, like, nah, you ain't fighting me, you're fighting for me. um,
Um,
and I mean, that's also something that, yeah, sure, you can do it in D20 systems, but it's not common and it's not particularly encouraged.
it's not reflected in the same way
No.
because, like in 5e, you can't have a character that literally insults people to death,
Yeah.
type of thing. But it's not reflected in the same regards to it. My part like part of me is like in Scion, if you wanted to make a completely social character, um, this is gonna be weird. Grab the lover calling, grab perfect partner, and do the teamwork action in combat every time
Mhm.
because that's going to double your successes as enhancements for the next person's attack, up to a maximum of 5, if I recall correctly, maybe a little bit more. I need to reread the rules on enhancement. But in which case, if they beat the person's defense, then they took 2 damage, which is going to be the same if you did your roll and beat their defense, and they just
Mhm.
did their roll and beat their defense, type of thing. Um, so it's kind of like there are ways for the mechanics to reflect some of that. And the only reason why I know about that is because I don't read every ability. I don't have every ability memorized. I My players tell me the things that interest them, and then we look through it together, and I have probably forgotten more about the abilities that I've read in the past few months than I remember. But yeah, like Ghost, because since he's been playing on my Thursday games, he grabbed Perfect Partner, and
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my God, that's strong.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like, yeah, I could make a totally social character in a D20 system, but I'm not gonna. It's not gonna feel the same way. Like, sure, I could make a bard that insults people to death.
Mhm.
Um, but it still feels like a combat class. It doesn't feel like a social thing. It still feels like some type of warrior thing. Whereas, um, in in our group, I'm not a wholly social character. I am actually fairly proficient in my character is fairly proficient in combat. But he also goes around making contracts with
Mhm.
everyone, because that's what he enjoys doing. Um,
Gotta get an army somehow.
yeah, gotta, you know. And I've found that this is also sort of a way to combine the warrior part with the social part because he is a very social character as well.
Mhm.
Manipulation and presence, I think, are two of his strongest stats, alongside might. So, you know, he can punch things, but he can also talk very
Yeah.
well. And so for me, he's become sort of, or like my view of him is that one further down the line, he's probably gonna become sort of a leader type. Um, that also leads by going into combat alongside his quote unquote troops. Because, spoiler alert, he's gonna fucking lead a crusade against another religion, because they kind of killed his religion, so payback time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just taking a look at it. It's like might is one of your highest, but presence and manipulation, like your social skills are your
Yep.
highest. Taking a look at
Sure,
them.
I've maxed out might, but social is still my strongest block
Yeah.
of skills. So that's I think kind of fun.
Well, it's very fun. Stuff like that's always very fun. But
Mm.
yeah.
I
It's
also
it's
mm, sorry.
I had a thought and then I lost it anyway.
Oh,
So it's
sorry.
fine. It's okay.
No, but I also enjoy, and this is definitely not um exclusive to any system, but I have a thing where I enjoy making a character that seems one way and is a completely different way, or not perhaps completely different way, but has aspects that break the stereotype, I guess.
Yeah.
Ruby was like that. I would say Omnos is like that. And my upcoming Pokemon character will also be like that. So apparently that's something that I enjoy doing. And like, if I'm gonna explain it for those who haven't watched our roleplay, my character Ruby looked very, at least in the beginning, looked very much like an attractive woman who an attractive blonde who may live more off of her looks than anything else, but she was also highly intelligent. Um, and Omnos, my current character, well, he I think comes across as very much a fighting type of character or strong guy, but he's also quite intelligent and very highly socially capable. And I'm not gonna say what my upcoming Pokemon character is gonna do because I know at least one of the players is going to watch this, so he will have to find out in the game.
I mean, almost definitely has a commanding presence. I think he's the first character like outside of, oh yeah, we totally built the character to be attractive or look like this, that someone's just gone like, oh wow, you're pretty.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I just found it. It just happened. It just happened.
Yeah, it's what happens when it's just like make a presence in regards to this, you know? Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I also feel like I don't know. I sometimes I feel like I make so many unnecessary actions and decisions where it's like, you know what? I'm gonna not pay for this because I don't feel like paying for this. Can I roll to see if I don't have to pay for this?
You didn't have money, it's fair. It's
Yeah, but I
fine.
did have friends who could have paid for me and who were
Nomnos
willing.
didn't know that at the time. You got
Fair.
yours first.
Fair.
And then there was the magic coin.
True that, true that. But I feel like that's a habit I have, and sometimes I feel like, no, I'm just being annoying because me as a player, I know I could have just, waited and had it paid for me.
Fine. I like decisions like that. It adds character depth because then like right afterwards it was just kind of like, well, I can get that for you, and it added a little bit of a character dynamic type thing for you guys to get to know each other.
Yeah,
Whether you keep doing that as Omnos, now that becomes a different story.
yeah, there is such a thing as overdoing it. And I try to find some sort of balance, but I don't always trust myself to do so.
Speaking of character decisions, something that we said that we were going to talk about last time, and then we got a little bit distracted today. Um, I know I've briefly touched about this. I don't know if it was on recording or not, but something that I find aggravating in regards to character decisions in today's climate is the fact that, well, you've been playing Three Hopes recently.
Mhm.
So Three Houses, the
Mhm.
basis for Three Hopes, for better and for worse.
Fire Emblem, for
Um,
those who don't know.
uh, Three Houses had more LGBT representation than other games. But the issue with
You mean
that
they
is,
actually had some?
well, we'll get to that in a second. But they still only had one male option in regards to that. The other thing, and the reason why I said is, like, I want to agree, at the same time I disagree, is because in Fates there was one for a lesbian type of aspect to it because it's a binary in regards to how you're setting up your character. There was one for lesbian and then there was one for men type of thing. So really more representation was just on one end, which
Mm.
is kind of bothersome. Don't get me
And let
wrong,
me
as
guess, it was more representation on the female side.
mhm, because I think Idleguard, I think Dorothea, I think there's one or two options
I think you
for
could
women loving
even
women.
couldn't you marry the inner voice of this?
Yes.
And I think I could do that even as a female.
I don't really know what's going on with Sothis because, like, everyone else has the classic CBAS
Hmm.
relationship thing. Sothis just has S, so I
Yeah.
don't really know about
I
like
also don't know
including
because
that
I didn't
one.
go that route, but I seem to recall I had some choice at
Hmm.
some point in the game. And I was like, okay, I've never had a support conversation with this, but whatever, I could do this. I'm not gonna, because I have
Yeah,
my eyes set on something else right now, which I
exactly.
think was Ash, for the record. But yeah, I think it's bothersome as well, and I think it sort of cements the whole thing where um, that fetishize. I can't talk.
Fetishization,
Yeah,
fetishization, something like that.
of lesbianism. It's like, oh, this
Hmm.
is okay because guys get off on it, but like guy on guy, no, 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 not that's not okay because that's not attractive to men, sort of thing. Except it is for some, obviously.
Obviously.
And like even if we're, and I'm not like encouraging making a fetish out of things. Although on the other hand, like to a certain extent, I think it's still okay to do that. Like have your preferences, get off on stuff, I guess. But like when it comes to this sort of thing, it's also like people's like yeah, sure, whatever this or this demographic gets off on it, but for some people, it's literally their life. It's how is who they are. Um, and so it's not like just about, oh, we're gonna target this or this demographic with this. It's like, but like, I think most people want to be able to see themselves or recognize themselves in games, or for that matter, like, and I mean, being female, playing games. I mean, it's been pretty. There's. It's still pretty recent that I get to choose whether or not I'm gonna play a male or a female character. Um,
It's nice to be included.
yeah.
Is generally what it boils down to. To address a point is when it comes to fetishization, it's great, like what you like. Don't do it to actual people.
No.
Like
No. No. No.
view
No. No.
people as people actually are.
Yeah. I'm just
Um,
saying when it comes to media.
I'm just clarifying
Mm.
for people that might take that a little
I
bit
also want to
poorly.
clarify that I didn't mean how it might have been taken.
But
Uh,
like, even though it's mostly with an indie game, there's a dating sim called Arcade Spirits. which is kind of a fun little thing. I've only seen somebody play through the very beginning of it,
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. Um, it's very nice. But one of the reasons why it's something that I recommend is because dating sims, it's kind of in the name, and I get it. Dating sims are about creating relationships. And at the very beginning, you have the option to make it, as we say in some of the circles I'm in, make it very spicy, have some flirty introductions, have some introductions that are primarily just actual like talking and getting to know somebody, or no relationships, just friendships type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get to see any gender options in that one picked, but it's still very nice type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's people who are going to like Game Freak or trying to add petitions to add just a neutral option for those people that are not necessarily ascribing to the binary.
Mm-hmm.
But like the reason why I bring up Arcade Spirits when talks like these come up is because that is the first time that I've seen an option like that in a dating sim. Is
Mm-hmm.
just that it's nice for people to sit there and not feel pigeonholed that they have to pick something because they might like this genre of game type of thing.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry. I'm gonna go
But
turn on the lights, but I will still be talking. Because I think the thing for me is with, for example, Fire Emblem, it's not primarily a dating sim, or at least it doesn't sell itself as primarily a dating sim.
mhm,
It portrays itself as a Japanese RPG strategy game, I guess.
mhm, which it
Um,
is.
yeah, with dating sim elements to it. And I think in that case, representation to me matters more than if you're a dating sim portraying yourself as a dating sim, because a dating sim can target a specific demographic. Like, this can be a straight dating sim, this can be a gay dating sim, this can be like trying to be for everyone, uh, and it can be asexual, or it can have explicit sexual stuff. But when it's a game that's like that's not the primary goal, is not being a dating sim, then I feel like having representation almost matters more. Because you have people from all, like, you know, like, how do I word this properly? It's just like, because I mean, I might like everything else about this game, but then, I like it's if I say I were gay and there were no gay options, then it's like, well, I mean, I like everything else about the game, but this one aspect of the game,
Mhm.
I just have no options. Um,
Well,
whereas,
you'd like
if I were gay, I probably wouldn't. Uh, I probably wouldn't get a dating sim that I knew was like targeted at straight women. Equally as I don't expect, any of my male friends to pick up any of my otome dating sims, or visual novels, because they're primarily targeted at a female demographic. If they still want to play them, fair enough, but they're not the target demographic here.
I think for me it's less that like yes, there's a bit of marketing that goes into it. But it's kind of like more options is just going to broaden your audience type
Obviously,
thing.
obviously, yeah.
Sure, you can sit there and get something to a focus and get your niche game out there and whatnot. That's great. I'm not telling you not to, but like um we're talking about being pigeonholed just a little bit ago. Like part of the reason why a lot of people might play dating sims is because they're what's the word? Low stakes.
Mhm.
type of thing in comparison. So you don't have to feel like the stress of, oh, I'm going to die if I don't do this or something
Mhm.
like that. With like notable exception, Ace Attorney, if you get stuff wrong in Ace Attorney, eventually you will have to go back to a checkpoint or restart type of thing.
Mm.
Um, as a visual novel type
Mhm.
aspect. But dating sims tend to be low stakes and they tend to have a lot of really good character options type of thing
Mm.
because it's about interacting with the characters.
Yep.
But like some of the stuff in regards to like visual novels, they might pigeonhole you into an aspect to it. And this will go back to Fire Emblem here in a little bit. But part of the reason why having more options now not only makes people feel included, it also makes people feel like they have choices. There's
Mhm.
more player agency.
Mhm.
This is my biggest aspect, my biggest gripe with Three Houses in regards to the dating aspect of the game. There is only one like MLM option type thing. Because while there is a second option to get a close relationship with another male character as a male character, when you get to that option, you are married to that character's daughter.
Which I find fucking weird.
Me too. So really, if you wanted to play, or if you just wanted to have an experience, or just kind of get together with the guy at the end, you're locked into one character if you're playing a masculine character, which kind of gets to that pigeonhole feeling again, where even though it's not the primary thing, it's just that's kind of where you're stuck, and it's part of the reason why every time this comes up in regards to Three Houses, I pound my fist on the table and I go, "Let me marry Claude, you cowards!"
Yep.
Because Claude is great.
Cloud is great. I also feel like there are some implied gay relationships in that game that
Like
are
Claude.
not what?
Sorry, I said like Claude. Okay.
That
Um,
are not explicit. For example, I think Annette and what's her name? Her best friend.
Marianne.
No, Marianne is the blue-haired one. It's the light-haired
It's
one.
the gray. Yeah, that's the priestess
Yeah,
type. I can't remember her name. I
she's
think it
in.
begins with an M.
What did you say?
I said I think it begins with an M. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. Mercedes. Mercedes.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Annette and Mercedes. I think if they have the highest support option at the end of the game, they are sort of implied
Mhm.
to be together, but it is not explicit at all. It is more like, oh yeah, they remain the closest friends, not marrying anyone and seeing each other regularly, sort of thing.
Oh my God, they were roommates.
Kind of thing. Yes.
I think
They
the
kept
same thing
visiting
happens.
each other very frequently and did not date anyone else. Eh, are you happy now? And it's like, no, not really.
I think something similar happens with Manuela and Dorothea
Hmm.
if they're just high
Hmm.
enough because they
I
were
think
both
there
actresses and
was.
then they go again.
I think there was one of the much older Fire Emblems, maybe seven even, that had a similar thing for two male characters, where it was like, but I can't remember which ones.
Mhm.
But probably Lucius, if I, if I would have a guess. Um,
And like the aspect about this is like Fire Emblem when it comes to main console titles is not the worst by far. It's just that it's very easy to take a look at because of the dating sim
yeah.
aspect to it. And it's not that we dislike it, it's that
No.
it could do better.
Yep. Absolutely, and I mean, like you said, it is by far not the worst. At least there are some options. There are many games that don't have that. Um, I will say though, because Rune Factory didn't used to have any same-sex options at all, I don't think. And Rune Factory 5, I guess it didn't have any, or maybe only some, from the beginning, but they later made it so that you can date any one of the dateable characters,
That's
regardless.
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like, why not? Why would I be unable to have? Because I mean, and you could argue like, oh, but then we have to rewrite dialogue. Not necessarily.
Mm-mm.
I mean, why would my like me as a female have a different relationship with you know Ludmilla, for example, one of the characters? Why would I have to necessarily have a different relationship with her compared to like the male protagonist? It doesn't have to be that way. And I mean, then you could say, well, I mean, but that becomes different. Like then the relationship isn't as good. And it's like that's up for me as a player to decide. If I still don't like the relationship, then whatever. I just don't pick that one.
Fun.
And I think that
I'm just-
also, comes down to pigeonholing people. Like, oh well, if you're gonna have a female, an FXF relationship, then it should look like this. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to. Like, all relationships are sort of different, regardless of sexual orientation.
Yeah, I just kind of pulled up one randomly,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because we were talking about like different dialogue options and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, yeah, they are basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of changes in dialogue, but it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
because I just pulled up Dorothea's as support because I'm like, oh yeah, she can be both Byleth models.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and it's just kind of like there's it's not much in regards to the change. Like it's there, but it doesn't have to be. It's mostly just copy pasta, and
Mm-hmm.
that'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see, because like some people,
Mhm.
in my experience, have this view that, particularly for same-sex relationships, that like, oh, well, who's the guy in the relationship and who's the girl in the relationships? And it's like, doesn't have to be like that. No, like, I mean, or like I said, that all same-sex relationships have to look the same or have to have a certain dynamic. And it's like, well, not all straight relationships have the same dynamic, so why would it be any different with same-sex relationships? I don't get it.
Um, that is a kettle of fish that I don't know if I'm ready to address yet. And I know for a fact that the best way that I have found to address stuff like that involves topics that I cannot talk about on YouTube.
Fair enough.
So, mm,
Fair enough. I mean, I'm
well,
just I'm just talking my own opinions or views
mhm.
on things, and obviously I am primarily straight, I would say. Uh, Mostly straight leaning, if nothing else. Um, so obviously someone else would be more qualified to talk on the topic than I am. But
No, it's okay. It's just that there's a lot in regards to it because it boils down to generally it's the same as straight relationships where as in specifically there is no right way to
yeah,
it. Everyone's kind of got a different aspect to it.
yeah,
The main aspect to it on why people ask, well, who's the what in X relationship is because of heteronormativity.
yeah.
And they expect things to be the exact same, and it's
Hmm.
no,
No,
no, it is not.
no, and I mean, like, of course there are perhaps like yeah, sure, there might be relationships that do work like that.
Mhm,
Um, and I think that, or I would say it's possible as well that um, same-sex relationships or other different constellations are pushed towards that by the heteronorm
mhm.
that exists in society, where it's like this is what you see every single day of your life, not just growing up, but like constantly you're fed with this, and um, this is like the portrayed norm for all relationships, and consciously or not, I think that it's easy to be pushed in that direction.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot,
Yeah.
for better and for worse. There's a lot.
I just hope that we're at least moving in the right direction. But sometimes looking at events, I wonder.
I don't know what it's like there. You might be.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know either, honestly, these
Hmm.
days. Particularly since, even living here, I am fed with a lot of news from over your way.
Mhm.
Because we live in a pretty US centric world as well, so.
We are a superpower that have decided to try to be the world's police force.
Hmm.
I understand.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not even
what
just
happens?
that, it's just also the fact that to a great extent, at least in the West, the US has been sort of, the cultural capital of the West. There's a lot of media produced there, and it is exported to at least most of Europe, I would say. We certainly import a lot of your media in every way, shape, and form. I think there's more influence from other places now as well than there used to be, simply because of the internet and everything like that. So, nowadays, sure, like I can readily watch anime, for example, which is different from American media. I can also watch various South Korean series, movies, etc. There's quite a bit of Chinese media as well, because China's also kind of a superpower in a
Oh
way,
yeah.
particularly economically. So for better or worse, read that as you will. Um, but for a very long time, we've imported a lot of American media and culture. So we still get a lot of influence from you guys this way. So what
A couple
happens
of
over
thoughts.
at you guys' place affects us.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts in regards to that because in certain cases, at least here, I know that copyright law and stuff is different everywhere. I know that if I write a book here, I'm going to, and I want you to get a hard copy, I have to go talk to a Swedish publisher and see what happens there.
Mhm.
That stuff aside, part of the reason why that's interesting and that this in and of itself will kind of go on to a main topic. So I just kind of want to address this shortly for a couple of reasons because we were talking about different medias. Um, a lot of people like Ghibli movies, speaking of anime and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Over here in the States, Ghibli, the only reason why we have Ghibli here or did here was
Mhm.
because Disney picked it up um, and licensed it in the US type of
Mhm.
thing. So that's why we got Spirited Away, Mononoke, etc. That Disney had a hand in that.
Yep.
And speaking of the mouse, the cool thing that's coming out is later this year or next year or something like that. And part of the reason why I care about this is because of my interest in Scion. There's a Bollywood movie
Mhm.
that's being sent that is being licensed by Disney. Like it's
Mhm.
being produced over there, but to get it to other audiences.
Yeah.
Disney's picking it up,
Mm.
and it is called uh, Brahmastra type
Mhm.
thing. It has a lot of aspects in regards to I want to say Hinduism and Indian faith type of thing,
Okay.
kind of in similar veins to a lot of the superhero stuff that's going on with big special effects and neat stuff. But
Mhm.
it looks interesting. Can like somebody that's definitely that I talked to. Their online handle is Kamesy. She she seems pretty excited for it. Definitely is more into that than I am, but
Mm.
it's definitely nice to see the world get more influence of other cultures
Mm.
from other places type
Yeah.
of thing. Um, but yeah, so it's just being able to go out and have different medias and see those cultures is pretty great. I mean,
Now I
I'm
just
happy
have to
for
make a tiny dig at Disney and say I hope the writers got paid.
it. Yeah, pay your writers.
Yep. And
There's
for those who don't know, just look up Disney.
just look, Disney must pay.
Yeah,
It's a
Disney
tag.
must pay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
All right. I think we've been at that for long enough, though. We're a little over an hour, so
Mhm. Yeah, I
want to
should
talk about
probably
culture
round
and
that
things we
off.
can.
We did ramble on this time as well. I got a bit
Yeah,
sidetracked on roleplay as per usual. And
it's
then
fun. If you guys aren't role playing, there are plenty of games sit there. I know that we technically take the piss out of 5e a lot, but it is a great way to get into the
yeah,
hobby.
yeah. Do not
So
be discouraged from going into it just because I don't like it. I mean, whatever system you get into role playing with, go for it because it's fun, and just make
you can
sure
find
that
a
you have a group that you're comfortable with because that's the most important thing.
Mhm. You can find a group that plays 5e, test it out, and see if you like it. If you like the aspect of it and you want to try a different system, well, now you know you like it.
Hmm.
And if you pick up 5e and go, well, I really don't like this, then you don't have to. Problem solved. Figured out. But no, it's a fun hobby. It's an expensive hobby because books get expensive
Yep.
and clacky math gems get expensive, but
There are some
um,
free systems though to try out. Even 5e has
absolutely.
some free stuff on D&D
Mhm.
Beyond. So,
SRDs are great. But yeah.
hmm and with
So
that, we round off this episode of Rambling On.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know. One of the
We
2.
don't even know our own name, but that's okay. We're competent here.
Mhm.
Uh, hopefully we'll see you next time, or you'll see
Yeah.
us. We don't see you. I promise. We're not watching.
Or are we? Bye.